Hello and welcome to the David Kurten Show here on today's News Talk. It's Wednesday, the 27th of March. Today is the day that nomination papers have to be in to the Greater London Authority for candidates who want to stand in the London Mayor and Assembly election. This is slightly before when they have to be in for the other local elections in local councils around the country. So we may have an announcement even tonight. The Greater London Authority has to announce the candidates within 2 working days of the deadline. So it could be tonight, it could be tomorrow, or it could be on Tuesday. Whatever happens, it's going to be very, very interesting. Now, I was at City Hall yesterday handing in nominations for the Heritage Party to stand in the London Assembly. But of course, more attention is going to be focused on the London mayor election because the mayors that we've had in London have not been very good. This is a position that has existed for 24 years now. Ken Livingstone was not a particularly good mayor, neither was Boris Johnson. But the one we've had for the last 8 years has been an absolute disaster for London. And that, of course, is Sadiq Khan. And I know him very well, not in a particularly friendly manner, because I was on the London Assembly myself for 5 years, where I questioned him about all kinds of things that he was doing wrong and mismanaging London and making strange announcements and policies which didn't make much sense and didn't help ordinary people, particularly people who drive cars. And one of the main issues coming up in the London Assembly is the ongoing war on cars, particularly for people who live in outer London, but also people who live around the edges of London and drive in the commutes, because he has, of course, imposed this thing called the ULEZ, the ultra low emission zone, where if you have a petrol car that is pre 2006 or a diesel car that is pre 2015, you have to pay £12.50 a day just to drive into the Greater London area. And on top of that, there's a congestion charge of £12 a day if you want to drive into central London as well. Now, this is happening in London, but it's indicative and a model of what is happening all over the country as well. Cities like Birmingham, Portsmouth, Bath, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen have introduced similar schemes, whether they're low emission zones, clean air zones. It doesn't matter what they're called. Motorists are being hit in the war on cars, as well as 15-minute neighborhoods and low traffic neighborhoods where there are road blockages all over the place in lots of London boroughs, which are approved by the mayor because he likes the general direction that climate alarmism is taking people and the way that people are losing their freedom to travel around in their own cities and towns in their own vehicles. This is not the only thing that he's done wrong. There has been spiraling out of control crime in London in the last 8 years since Sadiq Khan took office. Almost every week we hear of a stabbing, often between groups of young men who are getting into gang fights with other young men. And tragically, a lot of these stabbings and a lot of the violent crime that we see in London is black on black crime. But of course, no one wants to mention this because it's not politically correct to do so. In fact, the people who adhere to critical race theory, and Sadiq Khan is clearly someone who does that, would rather talk about white privilege and diversity being our strength, which is a mantra he comes out with all the time. Well, a diversity of skills is a strength, but diversity based on different characteristics where everybody thinks the same way and nobody has any particular skills apart from to bang off cultural Marxist nonsense is not particularly something that is going to develop the economy or bring any prosperity to the City of London, the United Kingdom, or anywhere else. We need a new mayor of London. One of the other things which I think is absolutely appalling is that he continually talks about tackling violence against women and girls, but this isn't really done at all. We see some of the worst violence against women and girls is actually perpetrated by people in the Metropolitan Police who the Mayor of London is in charge of in the role of police and crime commissioners, such as the murder of Sarah Everard terribly in Clapham Common a couple of years ago. And as I questioned the mayor when I was there, every major city in England has found grooming gangs, and they are beginning to be tackled, except one city, which is London, the biggest city in England, the biggest city actually in Europe. And nobody seems to have found any grooming gangs in London. Now, if they are in existence in Birmingham and Leeds and Sheffield and Manchester and Newcastle, it's almost certain that this is going on in London as well. So my question when I was still a London Assembly member to the mayor was, why hasn't this been found in London? His response was, why are you asking me? Is it because of my ethnicity? Is it because of my religion? I said, Mr. Mayor, no, it's because you're in charge of police and crime and you're the person who's got to do something about it. Clearly, still nothing has happened in the years since I asked the question. And for that reason as well, we need a new mayor of London who is going to stop the war on cars and is going to really properly tackle violent crime in London and spread out something good and a good model of how to be a mayor around the country, rather than the terribly bad model that we've had over the last 8 years.